I want to introduce you, Terence McKenna. I'm really happy to be sitting here talking to you, the author of the Brotherhood of the Screaming Abyss, where he writes about his time with his brother, Terence McKenna. Let me tell you how I was introduced to your brother. So I was a raver from the get-go. Back in the 90s when the first big wave of American rave scene started, it was a group, you probably know the name because he did a few things with a few groups, Space-Time Continuum. They put out this project called Alien Dreamtime. I was about 16 years old. I had to sneak out of my house to go, and I dropped some acid. And I'm listening to Space-Time Continuum, and I'm hearing this voice and this inflection, which is foreign from anything I've heard, especially being from Miami, where everyone's Latin. But he didn't even speak like any white person I know. And I'm hearing the message and wow, this is deeper. This is not a party. This is not a concert. This is more than rave. This is a movement and consciousness. And I thought he was the DJ. I thought he was the performer. Right. I didn't realize it was just his voice being the soundtrack. He wasn't the person playing the music. And when I looked to see who Terence McKenna was, I realized he was kind of like Timothy Leary of my generation.
You know, we lived our whole life together. You know, he died when he was 53, but so my life encompasses his. Well, when we were brothers, when we were young, you know, he was terrible. I mean, he was really mean to me, you know, as brothers tend to be. And but we moved beyond that. He was just you know, he had a very active mind, and he was just a curious person, and interested in all kinds of things. And fortunately for me, he was happy to share those things. So, you know, we got interested in science fiction at an early age, and that was a big influence on our thinking. And then we discovered Jungian psychology, and then we discovered, you know, shamanism. All of these kind of at the same time that we were discovering psychedelics. And when those came along, you know, he shared them with me. What got us interested in psychedelics, to be honest, really interested to the point where we dedicated our lives to it, was when we discovered DMT. And DMT has been the, you know, and that's the active ingredient of ayahuasca, but we discovered it as a you know, paste, that not even very pure, that you smoked. When we stumbled across DMT.
Where did you stumble across it?
Terence worked the matrix. He was able to boost some U.S. Army grade DMT from the Stanford Research Lab, but not him, but a friend of his. It just happened. It wasn't the agenda. It just happened, and it happened because his ideas and his talks resonated with people. And at the time he was talking about them, nobody else was talking about it. This was the 80s, basically the 80s. It was not, you know, politically correct to be talking about psychedelics in the 80s. When we discovered DMT, we thought, this is not simply the most amazing drug we've ever discovered. This is the most astonishing thing in the universe that we've stumbled across.
It was insane when I first did ayahuasca, and then I did DMT afterwards, and I've done DMT twice. One of them was so intense that I can hang with it usually, but this time I thought I was going over the edge. It made me
That's
really
what you want to do, is go over the edge.
Yeah, I know. I wasn't necessarily ready, but I was happy that I saw every molecule with, you know how, like, you know, when your eyes are closed, you're seeing the sacred geometry and you're going through the dimensions, but your eyes are open and you're kind of, reality. Well, I opened my eyes and the molecules of everything around me were going at the speed of, like, the way they actually are. Some of it was a little familiar to me because, again, I've tripped on acid, but it was so outside of my brain, meaning, like, I knew that what I was seeing was outside of my own individual consciousness. It was part of some greater consciousness. It was not something manufactured in my brain. It wasn't just happening because of the matter in here was going crazy and the neurons were, you know, exploding because of some chemistry. Because when I've tripped on LSD, and MDMA, I see visions in my eyes closed, but what I'm seeing is a lot of, like, shallow dream type of images, iconography, things that I've seen in my real life, Mickey Mouse running across a pond. When you're on ayahuasca, you're seeing that sacred geometry. You're seeing things that the ancients must have seen when they were doing psychedelics, and it shows and it feels too. The thing about ayahuasca is that healing element where you feel that something outside of you is helping you come to terms with whatever traumatic things you can't get over in your waking life. That was the healing part, and that was beautiful. But as far as connecting with the grid, so to speak, and seeing that there's a greater spirit or a greater consciousness outside of you, and you feel like a ripple in the pond as opposed to, you know, a separate little pea by himself. That's what I felt after I did ayahuasca.
Right. Well, a lot of people have that impression, and actually, that's kind of the crux of the situation. I don't know that you can say it doesn't come from within you. You certainly have the idea that it opens up some kind of portal or something to other dimensions. There are other entities there. It seems like it, you know, but then we don't want to underestimate the mind's ability to construct reality, because the mind in fact does construct reality. So it's very hard to discuss these things in a clear way, because you have to talk about, well, it's not within me, and it's outside somehow, but outside, inside, these are dualities where it's all one.
Exactly.
Right?
Well, that's the ultimate.
There is no border.
Right.
There is no separation.
Exactly, and that's why I said ripple in a pond of water, because you realize that you are part of the greater picture, and these visions, obviously, they're coming into me. But no, you talk about entities. Let me go off on a tangent. So, I understood when people say elves or entities, especially the first time that I did it, I saw a bunch of eyes and fangs in the more organic dimension, because I did go through the geometrical shapes and the lights, and the brightest light I ever saw in my life, that I had to open my eyes and realize it was in a dark room with people doing ayahuasca. With my eyes closed, I was like looking into the sun. But when I got into this organic dimension, I saw a lot of eyes looking at me, and I felt there were other beings, and a lot of them looked demonic, but I wasn't scared of them. They seemed very benign, almost meek, to be honest with you, almost like they were asking me for sympathy, and they're...
The anaconda and those sorts of things are your friends, right? They look scary, but they're actually helping spirits, you know. Whether or not they're spirits is a question. They present themselves to you.
They
you
do.
know? I mean, I have a good friend who, you know, he says, you've got to stop using this terminology, because this is really not what's happening. It's all coming from within you. You're generating these things, and you're misleading people to use that. And I say, well, are you so sure? You know, because it certainly projects that way often. So I think we don't really know. I mean, I think we don't really know.
Well, Graham Hancock...
But I do think that, like, consciousness is probably built into the structure of reality at the most fundamental level.
Well, I mean, the way it helps us really understand things, spirituality, from an almost scientific point of view, because it's like, when I was young, and I was in second grade, I was calling out the bullshit in the Bible. Like, this, come on, the earth was, you know, made in 6 days, like Adam and Eve, we all came from Adam and Eve. Is anyone doing the math here? Where's the dinosaurs? You know?
Right.
Like, so, and then I had to go through kind of an agnostic period, and then I rediscovered science, I discovered quantum physics, I discovered all these things where it's kind of like leaving room for, let's just say, a universal consciousness that we all kind of are part of and feed into. You know, and then you come up with these theories when you're on ayahuasca. Like, I feel like we're all like a bud on the same consciousness, and the universe wants to experience itself, and it can't experience itself necessarily being a rock, so it has to evolve into life that can experience itself, and then in and of itself, we are part of the universe. Those kind of things, and then you feel like you're just like connected to everything, so why will you be mean? And when you hurt someone, you're really hurting yourself, and when you're angry at someone, you're really projecting anger at yourself, and you start looking at things like that psychologically, and that's where a lot of the self-help comes from. And I have atheist friends that do ayahuasca, and you know, they start to at least question, okay, they start to at least think, okay, there's possibilities. Graham Hancock said that he would love to give Stephen Hawking DMT. He says on ayahuasca, maybe that won't push him over the edge as far as opening up to a divine presence in the universe, but on DMT, he's sure it would knock him off his rocker. So that's what they call it.
I think he meant Richard Dawkins, didn't he? Not Stephen Hawking.
Well, he said Stephen Hawking too, because Stephen Hawking has been trying to point out that there's no God and everything, but Richard Hawkins as well, and then Christopher Hitchens is probably figuring out what the truth is right now as we speak. But these are all people I still look up to, by the way, in terms of the way that they're practical and pragmatic and humanistic.
It's useful for these people not to assume that they know the answers, and I think that's one of the main things that I've learned from ayahuasca. I mean, it's kind of paradoxical, but the main lesson, every time I take it, it emphasizes, just remember, you don't know shit.
Yeah.